Hey everybody, Red Mage here. Welcome back to this series where I go through different RPG products that I have and give them a quick flip through and review. In this one I'm going to be going through 3 Adventure Anthologies for the basic fantasy role-playing game. These are all really cool. Each of these is, I think they're a little older now. I think this first one came out maybe in 2014, was the latest edition of it or something like that. Like, these are not really new. So maybe a lot of you guys already know about these, but they're new to me. And I was kind of shocked that all 3 of these Adventure Anthologies, and really the whole basic fantasy set, is basically all free, at least in PDF form. These are all free over on DTRPG. I'm going to be going through Adventure Anthology 1, I'm going to be going through Adventure Anthology 2, and I'm going to be going through Adventure Anthology 3. That's really it. Now, each of them is over 100 pages, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I really just want to give you guys a sense of what they're like. But actually, I kind of just want to draw your attention to them, because you can get them all for free right now. There's no reason to wait. Just go get them, because they're all free. And again, they're over 100 pages of adventures. Now, they're all done by different creators, so there's a handful of people that work on each book. And they're all in slightly different styles. You can tell that, like, the maps are slightly different formatting. I think everybody kind of put their own adventures together, probably with some guidelines, and then they were all submitted and compiled here. But the basic fantasy role-playing game is awesome. I've reviewed a few of their products before, like I talked about the Bestiary for one of the, I think it's Iron Falcon or something like that, which is one of the games that's in their line. And it was really cool free Bestiary. Most of their stuff is free in PDF form, so I recommend you guys go check it out. One of the adventures that I've reviewed on my channel before that they've published, the Basic Fantasy Project has, is the Black Apple Brew. And if you guys haven't seen that review, you need to go check it out. The Black Apple Brew is one of my favorite adventures that I've reviewed on the channel. It's up there in sort of top tier status. It's a really good adventure. Really imaginative. It's got Fae influence, and it's just a really cool adventure. So go check that one out. So when I first saw these, I was really excited. I thought, oh man, 3 full adventure anthologies. They're all free. Well, I can't believe I haven't heard of these. And again, I'm sure a lot of you guys probably have if you've been around for a while. This is probably not brand new. But for me it was. Now, each of these adventures, each of these collections, I should say, is for a whole bunch of levels. There's just a ton of adventures, as you can see here. You get a ton. You get Gold in the Hills, which is an adventure for 2 to 4 characters with level 1 to 3. Marilla's Magic Tower, which is for 3 to 6 characters, level 4 to 7. The Sombrera's Estate beneath Brimison. The Ruin of Darkfear Castle. Shepherds of Pineford. Death Crypt of Khaldun. The Vault of Thayer. The Slaver's Fortress. Taming the Flames. The Lost Tome. Insect Valhalla. Island in the River. Night of the Necromancer. So this one is actually, overall, I guess this is only about 87 pages, so this one's not over 100. The other 2 are. This is kind of incredible, though, that you get this many adventures for this wide of a level range, and it's all free. Now, there's a different style and tone for each of them. A couple of these are sword and sorcery. You have adventures in dungeons. You have adventures in cities. I mean, it's spread throughout the whole, all 3 anthologies. You have adventures for almost any style of game. There are mines, there are crypts, there are villages, towers, you're fighting orcs, you're fighting dragons, you're fighting goblins and lizard folk. Like, again, you're going to find an adventure or 2 in here that you really like. And one of the things that I think is really cool is that for each of these adventures, I shouldn't say for each of them, but for many of them, advice is given about how you can incorporate it into a bigger game, and a lot of times things are left open. So I'll go through a couple of adventures and I'll show you what I mean, but just give you guys a sense of what they look like. It's hard to do that because they are all slightly different and they're all done in unique styles. Now, there's a lot of overlap and there's obviously a similarity to the way that things are presented. They're kind of, connected into one format. Font choice is the same and that sort of thing. But the maps, for example, and the writing style and the tone are unique and individual to each adventure based on who created it. So this one, you get a hex crawl, a very small hex crawl. 8-mile hexes, with some locations there. But you get a background of the dungeon, or of the adventure, I should say. You get how to get the characters involved. And one of the interesting things here is that it kind of talks to you in a very good way. What I mean by that is it says, well, I'll just read through it. Starting in either King's Home or Barrow's Edge is the quickest way for the player characters to learn of the recent events in the area. Perhaps they have encountered goblins with gold nuggets or gold dust in their pouches, or have accepted payment or paid for items with these nuggets. Maybe they were guards for a trader who sold the weapons to the goblins. They could be new to town but are clearly adventurers and asked to investigate the old dwarven gold mine after a group of prospectors fails to return. In other words, this is what I find throughout the whole thing. There's this sort of conversational approach to the writing, which is it assumes you're not dumb. And it offers you suggestions, possibilities, but it doesn't say, here is how you must go. Even though there is some box text, which is, I assume, meant to be read aloud, most of these adventures are DMs writing for other DMs, right? Game masters writing for other game masters. And while there are a lot of adventures for new players, there's a lot of adventures for more experienced, characters, for new characters, whatever it might be. The conversational tone of this is like, look, we get it. You've run games before. Here are some suggestions of how you might want to incorporate this, but it's up to you. Here are different ways. And if someone's like, well, wait, how would I have the players run into goblins with gold nuggets or gold dust in their pouches? Okay, well, if you need to kind of have someone give you that, well, then maybe there's other adventures for you, right? Maybe you should start off with something simpler. Maybe you should start off with something that it really does hold your hand from the very beginning. But just throughout these books, I noticed, and I've been noticing this in some products, I would say, by more kind of, maybe not old school, but there's sort of classic adventure design mentality. Not the original adventures, because for a lot of those, there was a lot of like hand-holding. But I mean OSR adventures. There are some that go all in on assuming that you're kind of not very smart as a GM, and that you kind of have to be your hand has to be held, and that you kind of have to have everything spelled out for you. And I think those OSR creators are mimicking something that we see in like Wizards of the Coast products, where they have to make sure all of their T's are crossed and all of their I's are dotted, right? They have to, because it's just they're catering to such a wide audience, and they're trying to encourage new players, and they're trying to reach basically everybody at every experience level. But let's be honest, most people who play in the OSR have been playing in the OSR for some time. And if they are brand new, they're probably not going to find these books first, right? Like, again, let's be honest, if you are working in the OSR and you are creating a product that's pretty niche, or that's for a system that's not D&D or Old School Essentials or Shadow Dark, or even something like DCC, which is often something that maybe people who are just coming from D&D, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition or something, are going to encounter. If you're writing for something like the basic fantasy role-playing game, or you're writing for, well, gosh, any number of Swords and Wizardry, or any of these other old school games, chances are the people who are finding your games are not brand new to the hobby. This is turning into a rant, and I didn't mean it to be a rant, but one last note on it. I do think that a lot of people who create for the old school kind of have this idea that what they're going to be doing is creating this, well, I don't even know. Maybe I don't want to go into this too much, but I think that a lot of people want their adventure to be seen by everybody. And that's cool. But let's be honest, most people's adventures are going to be seen by, in this field, in this niche, the kind of people who are watching this channel, and they're going to be getting the sort of adventures that I recommend and things. Most of you guys are going to be getting adventures that are, you've played lots of games before. And so having a more conversational approach, having a more peer-to-peer conversation from the page to your table, it just makes more sense. So saying, hey, you can start here, you can start there, you could do this, you can do that. It's up to you, but here are some suggestions of how this could go. Some people might not even need that, right? You just give the map, and you give the encounters, and you give like some of the things that are happening there and some of the desires that, and you can just create the rest yourself. But if you're going to have a section about getting the characters involved or beginning the adventure, then just have it be conversational. Have talking to the player and be like, hey, you know what you're doing, but here are some suggestions. I think that's really cool. Okay, anyway, rant over. This particular adventure is very, very short. It's just a few rooms. You're dealing with goblins. You're dealing with an old goblin mine. Now, there's a suggestion here that you could expand this mine into a whole thing, but it says it's up to the GM. And again, you're going to see that a lot throughout these adventures, where it's like, hey, here is a dungeon, but it might show up as a sub-dungeon in a bigger mega dungeon if you want to add it in, but that's up to you. This is a cool location. Add it into a hex crawl. that's up to you how to do that. This is a really cool section of rooms, subsection of rooms. This is a cool town. Fit it into your game as you see fit. And again, that's what I mean by these adventure anthologies. Understand that the people who are going to be reading them, for the most part, are people who know how to make their own campaigns. And so these are suggestions of cool stuff to add into your game. That's the way to look at this. These are suggestions for cool stuff to throw into your game, but they're not going to tell you how to do that or where to do it. They're not going to build a whole world for you. This is like, hey, here's a dungeon or a location or a few rooms even, and I thought they were cool, so have them. And that's like my favorite kind of stuff, where people are just giving their own adventures, putting them together with art that they maybe have done themselves. And you're going to see this throughout. Like, it's not hyper-professional looking art sometimes. I would say that's a cool looking creature there. He looks a little friendly, this pipe beast. I don't think he's intending to be friendly, but he looks like he's waving, you know? I like him. I much prefer this style of just like, hey, here's my binder art. Here's the sort of stuff that I would draw or doodle for my own self while I'm making an adventure. I like that way more than, certainly AI art or any of this other really, really, really polished and ultimately kind of empty stuff. I like this stuff more. The adventures are old school in their layout. You can tell there's a lot of paragraph text. You got to read through it. So in that sense, it's a little bit more ponderous, even though these adventures are pretty short. But, as I said before, I don't even think I need to go through all of them because they're free. You guys should get them yourselves, read through them, see which ones you like and see which ones you don't like. And I guarantee, like for my example, as I was reading through it, I found a few in this first one that I was like, wow, that's super cool. I'm putting this in a game. That first Dwarven Mine, or the first Goblin Mine, I really like, and I think that could be a very short little intro adventure that has actually a deeper dungeon beneath it that the players are not initially going to go to. I like that sort of thing in a game, where you start off in a dungeon, but it's actually, like, say you do a hex crawl, and the players might even start, in media res in a dungeon, and they finish that adventure. And it's a short one. And there's actually a deeper dungeon beneath them, but they don't initially have any reason to go in there. And maybe it's too dangerous for them, or maybe it's locked. And so they leave, and then they have other hex crawls, adventures, and go other places. But that is eventually a place that they return later. And it's a cool callback. Oh yeah, we're going to where we started. That's a really fun thing to do. So I like that Goblin Mine for that reason. There's a deeper mine down below, there's stuff going on there, but you just deal with the goblins at the surface and then you leave. Now, one thing you see here is this adventure has sort of dual what's going on if there's a storyline or a non-storyline room. And you're gonna see that in some of these locations. So how to run this. You can do it as a dungeon crawl or as a mission. If you do it as a dungeon crawl, well, then this is what you'd want to read first, and this is how you might want to approach it. If you want to use it as a rescue mission, well, this is how you could approach it with a sort of box text, as you will. So the game's like, hey, we have a story. We've written a story for you if you want to include that, or you can just have it as a dungeon and put your own story to it and put your own stuff to it. And I think I saw that several times throughout this. So I did see this several times throughout this book, so that there are times when you're like, okay, here's the story version if you want that. Or here's just a dungeon, if you want that too. There's also this Adventure of the Shepherds of Pineford, which gives you a bunch of plot hooks. Because there's a village, and there's stuff happening, and there are people there doing things. Now, one complaint, but it's not a complaint, oh, it is a complaint, I guess, but it's just a feature of the age of these books and the changes of sensibilities of my preference, which is to have maps on every page. For most of these adventures, you only get the maps at the end, or at least, significantly at the end. That makes it a little bit more flipping, especially with the longer paragraph texts. These are things you're going to have to read through and prepare. You're not running these on the fly, mostly. At least I wouldn't think so. Okay, well, you guys get this the vibe here, right? I don't think I really need to go through all of these so much. I did want to highlight this. This was one of the things that I was thinking of earlier. So you can see it says concluding the adventure. So if you've played through it with with the story that they have included for you, with like the sort of NPCs that have motivations there, well, then here's what you can do. Grateful for their bravery, the magistrate of the territory honors the characters in a public ceremony and rewards them with 10,000 gold pieces. It's a lot of money. A lot of XP if you're playing cheap gold for XP. If this module was adapted to be part of a larger dungeon adventure, add this 10,000 GP to the Hoarding Khaldun sarcophagus instead. So, hey, if you don't actually want to make this a story, you just want to make it a dungeon, or this is part of a larger dungeon adventure, right? So you just take this mini map and these locations and jam it into another dungeon crawl that you're doing. Well, then you just change that one bit. Instead of getting a reward later, you get the money right there. There's an artifact down here called the Book of Khaldun. Has no official abilities. It's written in a language unfamiliar to the characters. Depending on how this module was used, the book might serve as merely a token of success, a hook for future adventure, or even an artifact around which an entire campaign is based. Right? So hooks are open. Avenues are open. You can think of these as puzzle pieces with very, very flexible edges, right? So that you can take these pieces and they're sufficient on their own, but you plug them in or you put them into a bigger puzzle of a campaign. I think that's super, super cool. And again, all of these are like these. The second anthology is a little bit bigger. This is 105 pages as opposed to 80. What was the first one? 87. This is 105. It was released a little later. You can see this one, the copyright is 2022. I think it's the latest this came out. The first one was, I think, copyright 2014. So the first Adventure Anthology is a lot older than these ones. But you can see there's a whole bunch of adventures. It's just like the first one. And they're all for different level ranges. They all have different authors. They're all different in terms of their tone and their presentation and their sensibilities, the kind of dungeons that are presented, the amount of text you have to read, the amount of monsters you're fighting, all of that. How big the dungeons are. This is a pretty sizable one. This reminds me of Hero Quest, just the way that it's laid out. It's very Hero Quest-like dungeon. Okay, anyway, like I said, I'm not going to go through these books in full detail because that's not really what I'm doing here. This video was mostly, I could have done this in 30 seconds. I could have done a video short, I guess. I just want to direct your guys' attention to these. If you haven't actually seen these before, I think probably a lot of my viewers have. Most of you guys are pretty in the know when it comes to these older adventures, especially. I feel like I'm more of a newcomer to a lot of this stuff, having only kind of come into the OSR with, well, fairly recently. And especially since this first book has been out since 2014. I wasn't even playing D&D 5th edition really in 2014. It came out in 2014? I don't remember when it came out. But I hadn't really played any game since D&D 3rd edition by that point. It had been a long time since I played D&D back in 2014. So if this was coming out between 2011 and 2014, I definitely was not aware of it. But I just stumbled across it, and I was like, oh, I gotta share this. So I hope you guys find this to be interesting. I hope you guys check these out. Again, they're free on DTRPG. I've said it a million times, but I'm going to say it again just because it is a very important fact. That's amazing. I wish more cool works were free over on DTRPG. Pay what you want is awesome. You know, I recommend giving people some money. But when people are just like, hey, have this cool thing and it doesn't cost you anything, I think that's great. Because these 3 books would just have, I mean, probably, maybe not, well, yeah, I would say years worth of campaigning, especially if you mix them together and sort of building a campaign out of them. You have tons and tons and tons of adventures in these books. And even if you don't like all of them, and I would predict you won't, I didn't like all of them, you're going to like some of them. And even if you just like one of them, that's a reason to get it, because, hey, it's free. So anyway, I'll put links below to where you guys can get them. All right, cool. Well, I hope this has been interesting, everybody, and I'll see you all in another video.